In the depths of the Church of Santo Domingo in Puebla, Mexico, there lies a crypt that remained sealed for more than 3 centuries, a place that the Inquisition had marked as forbidden, and which priests swore to keep closed forever. In 1683, 7 people vanished after descending into its underground chambers. What they found down there compelled the church authorities to order the entrance sealed with stone and mortar, declaring that no Christian soul should disturb that place until Judgment Day itself. Next to the last corpse, a letter was found warning. What we discovered is not a tomb, but a doorway. Today, we will uncover the chilling secret the church tried to bury for generations, and why even now the people of Puebla cross themselves as they pass by its gates. Puebla de Los Angeles, as it was called in the 17th century, was one of the most prosperous cities of the Viceroyalty of New Spain. Its cobbled streets, Baroque churches, and majestic convents reflected both Catholic devotion and the economic power of a society divided between wealthy Creoles and subjugated indigenous people. The mild climate of the region, often interrupted by thunderstorms that lit up the imposing Popocatépetl volcano, created a natural and spiritual backdrop. The Church of Santo Domingo, with its quarry stone facade and red tizontle, stood as a bastion of faith in the heart of the city. Built by the Dominican order, it was famous for its magnificent chapel of the Rosary, covered in gold, considered the house of God's gold on earth. But beneath its splendor stretched a labyrinth of crypts and underground passages, known only to a few. Among them was Father Geronimo Valverde, a 40-year-old Dominican priest, tall and thin, with a penetrating gaze and ink-stained fingers from countless hours spent transcribing ancient manuscripts. He was respected for his knowledge of dead languages, feared for his moral inflexibility, and had devoted his life to studying the forbidden texts locked away by the Inquisition. He believed that to fight heresy, one must first understand it. At his service worked Maria Itzel, a 19-year-old indigenous woman tasked with cleaning the temple. Orphaned and taken in by the Dominican nuns, she possessed a secret gift, the ability to see what others could not. Her nights were tormented by dreams filled with tunnels and ancient voices, a burden she dared not reveal for fear of being accused of witchcraft. During the Corpus Christi festivities, the entire city transformed. Processions of penitents, dances of Moors and Christians, and altars adorned with marigolds filled the streets. It was a time of collective devotion, but also of excesses hidden behind a facade of piety. In those days, church authorities often turned a blind eye to practices that blended Catholic faith with pre-Hispanic rituals, so long as they remained in shadows. But no one imagined that Holy Week of 1683, while the city meditated on the Passion of Christ, a horror was about to unfold in the depths of Santo Domingo that would forever change both the church and the city's history. On Holy Thursday of 1683, as rain lashed the rooftops of Puebla and lightning lit the domes of the churches, Father Valverde descended into the crypts accompanied by 6 men, 2 Dominican friars, a representative of the Holy Office, a Creole architect, and 2 indigenous workers. Maria Itzel, sent to bring them food, watched from the shadows. The expedition had been ordered after an earthquake revealed a crack in the deepest wall of the main crypt. Behind that gap, Valverde had glimpsed what appeared to be an older chamber, possibly pre-Hispanic, with strange symbols carved into the stone. The air below was dense and cold, saturated with the smell of damp earth and burnt wax. Torchlight cast dancing shadows on the stone walls, creating the illusion of figures moving among the burial niches. The only sounds were the steady drip of filtered water and the murmured prayers of the friars seeking divine protection. "This should not be here," whispered Father Valverde as he examined the opening. "These symbols are neither Christian nor indigenous. They are older." The Inquisitor Guzman, pale, with a pointed beard, looked on uneasily. "Perhaps it is better to seal this place and forget its existence," he suggested, nervously making the sign of the cross. But Valverde's curiosity prevailed. He ordered the workers to widen the gap. As the stones gave way, a blast of icy, fetid air burst forth from the darkness, snuffing out the torches for a moment. When the flames returned, the men stood before a circular chamber whose walls were covered in inscriptions written in a language even Valverde could not identify. In the center stood a black stone altar, upon which rested a rusted iron chest. Around the altar lay 7 skeletons arranged in a circle, each posed as though in reverence to the chest. "They are offerings," murmured Father Valverde, approaching with caution. "But I don't understand. These skeletons are neither indigenous nor Spanish." The architect stepped forward to examine the structure. "This chamber is impossible," he muttered. "By my calculations, we are already below the level of the lake. It should be flooded." As the men debated, Maria Itzel, hidden behind a column, felt a growing hum in her ears. The voices that haunted her dreams now echoed with startling clarity. "Do not open what was sealed. Do not read what was written." The Inquisitor Guzman, regaining some of his courage, approached the chest. "We must know whether this is the work of heresy or contains forbidden knowledge," he declared, ordering it opened. With a metallic shriek that sounded like a human moan, the lid lifted. Inside, they found a manuscript bound in what looked like human skin, an obsidian dagger, and 7 small figures carved from bone. "My God!" one of the friars exclaimed at the sight. "It is the Codex of Shadows. We believe it destroyed during the fall of Tenochtitlan." Father Valverde, trembling, took the manuscript despite Guzman's warnings. As he opened its pages, his face went pale. "This is not an indigenous codex," he whispered. "It is far older. It speaks of beings that existed before the coming of Christ, of doors between worlds, and of sacrifices meant to keep them sealed." At that moment, the ground trembled. Pebbles and dust rained down from the ceiling, while a low, guttural sound, like the growl of a colossal beast, rose from the depths beyond the chamber. "We must leave now," shouted the architect. But it was too late. The last thing Maria Itzel saw before fleeing in terror was the torchlight shadows twisting unnaturally, wrapping themselves around the men as they screamed in unspeakable horror. In a desperate final act, Father Valverde hurled a wax-sealed letter at her before the darkness swallowed him whole. 3 days later, when a rescue party descended into the crypts, they found only the opened, empty chest. There was no trace of the 7 men, only Valverde's blood-stained letter and a broken rosary. The church authorities immediately ordered the chamber sealed once more, embedding sacred symbols into the mortar and declaring the place forbidden under penalty of excommunication. The letter, later locked away in the Archbishop's secret archives, contained but a single trembling line. "What we have awakened cannot be contained. The door is open." The years following the crypt incident cast a shadow over Puebla like a silent plague. The Church of Santo Domingo, once overflowing with the faithful, saw its congregation steadily dwindle until only the most devout or the most desperate dared to cross its doors. Rumors about the 7 vanished men spread like wildfire, transforming into increasingly macabre legends that mothers whispered to their children to keep them away from the temple. And if you hear voices calling you from Santo Domingo's crypts, cover your ears and pray 7 Hail Marys, the grandmothers warned, for it is not the saints who call you, but those who were taken by the darkness. In 1695, 12 years after the incident, a wave of inexplicable deaths shook the city. 7 young people, all born the very year of the tragedy, were found lifeless in their beds, their faces frozen in expressions of absolute terror. Their bodies bore strange marks resembling ancient writing. Civil authorities blamed an unknown illness, but the townsfolk knew better. It was the price Puebla paid for the secret hidden beneath Santo Domingo. Meanwhile, Maria Itzel, who had fled into the countryside after the disaster, returned to Puebla in 1710, a prematurely aged woman. Her hair had turned completely white, and her distant gaze bore the weight of horrors witnessed long ago. Under the protection of the new parish priest, Father Diego Mendoza, Maria took up residence in a small room beside the sacristy, where she spent her days praying before the sealed entrance to the crypts. Intrigued by her obsessive devotion, Father Mendoza slowly earned her trust. "I do not pray for protection," Maria confessed one night. "I pray to keep them inside. Each Our Father is another brick in the invisible wall that holds them back." Meanwhile, the Inquisition declared the case closed, attributing the disappearances to an accidental collapse. Yet in the church's higher circles, a secret brotherhood was founded, the Guardians of the Seal, with a single mission: to ensure that the entrance to the crypt remained intact and under watch. In 1721, the Archbishop of Puebla ordered the construction of a new chapel over the area leading to the crypts. It was dedicated to the Virgin of Silence, a little-known devotion represented by Madonna pressing her index finger to her lips. Only the initiated knew that this was no call to contemplative silence, but a warning. There are truths that must remain unspoken. The city thrived despite the shadow looming over Santo Domingo. Over time, the tragedy faded into local folklore. It was said that on moonless nights, especially during Holy Week, one could hear chanting in an unknown language seeping from the church walls, and that those who listened too long vanished without a trace. Among the whispers and theories, the truth lived on in the secret journals of Father Diego Mendoza, who had continued Valverde's research in silence. In his writings, he recounted conversations with Maria Itzel, in which she described beings that existed in the spaces between reality, entities worshipped long before the Aztecs or the Olmecs, back when the earth was still young. "They're not demons as our faith understands them," Mendoza wrote. "They're older than our concept of evil. They simply exist in another plane, and they see our world as we see an anthill, something to watch, to study, and occasionally to disturb out of sheer curiosity." When Maria Itzel died in 1725, she was buried in an unmarked grave in the church's back garden. Sewn into her burial shroud was the original letter Father Valverde had entrusted to her on that terrible night. From that day, Father Mendoza ceased writing in his journal. 3 months later, he was found catatonic in the chapel of the Virgin of Silence, endlessly repeating a single phrase until the day he died. "They are counting. They are waiting. 7 is the number of the door." After his death, Father Mendoza's diary mysteriously vanished from the church archives. The Brotherhood of the Guardians of the Seal officially dissolved in 1767, when the Jesuits were expelled from Spanish territories. Yet some believe the order continued in secret. Its responsibility passed from one generation to the next. And so, the secret of the crypt of Santo Domingo faded into the mists of time, becoming no more than a whisper among Puebla's many legends. Until, 2 centuries later, destiny would place Valverde's forgotten letter into the hands of someone who would not rest until the truth was revealed. In the spring of 1952, during renovations for the tricentennial of the Church of Santo Domingo, a young archaeologist named Gabriel Morales supervised excavations in the chapel of the Virgin of Silence. At just 32 years old, Gabriel had already earned a reputation as a specialist in colonial religious architecture. Yet his true passion lay in the myths and legends woven into these sacred spaces. On April 17th, while workers were removing the old marble altar, the ground gave way beneath their feet, revealing a small hidden compartment. Inside, wrapped in wax cloth that had preserved it through the centuries, they discovered a carved wooden chest bearing the emblem of the Dominicans. "Stop," Gabriel ordered, his heart racing. "Bring the cameras and the precision tools." Under the watchful eyes of Father Antonio Suarez, the current parish priest of Santo Domingo, and with the reluctant permission of the archbishopric, Gabriel carefully opened the chest. Its contents left them breathless. The lost diary of Father Mendoza, a rosary made of black onyx beads, and an envelope sealed with red wax containing what appeared to be a fragment of parchment covered in incomprehensible symbols. "This is extraordinary," Gabriel murmured, delicately turning the yellowed pages of the diary. "This document could completely change our understanding of Puebla's colonial history." But Father Suarez, an older man with a severe face and piercing gaze, watched with evident unease. "Perhaps some things are best left buried, Senor Morales," he remarked. "Not all knowledge brings light." That night, alone in his small apartment in Puebla's historic center, Gabriel immersed himself in the diary's pages. The words of Father Mendoza, written in handwriting that grew increasingly erratic as the entries went on, revealed his growing obsession with the crypt incident and his conversations with Maria Itzel. By the glow of a desk lamp, while rain tapped gently against the colonial windows, Gabriel shivered as he read. "I have had the same dream for 7 nights in a row. I am inside the sealed chamber, standing before the black stone altar. The bone figurines dance around me while a voice whispers in my ears. 7 were taken. 7 were marked. 7 must return so that the door remains shut." A sudden clap of thunder startled Gabriel, spilling his coffee across the desk. As he hurried to clean the mess, he noticed that some drops had fallen onto the parchment fragment. To his astonishment, where the liquid touched, the indecipherable symbols shifted, transforming into letters in Latin, previously invisible. "My God," Gabriel whispered. He realized he was looking at text written in sympathetic ink, visible only when exposed to certain liquids. Quickly preparing a solution of warm water, he carefully applied it across the document. Slowly, a hidden message emerged, and it froze his blood. "I, Geronimo Valverde, write this in my last moments of clarity. What we discovered is not a treasure, nor a temple, but a threshold. There are 7 doors like this one in the world, sealed millennia ago. Our ancestors guarded them without ever knowing their true purpose. Now I understand why each generation must offer 7 guardians. The sacrifice is necessary so that they remain on the other side. I have seen the truth, and my mind can barely contain it. The 7 of us will return on the 7th day of the 7th month, in the year when the cycle completes. Seek those born with a mark. Only they can close what we have opened. If they fail, what waits beyond the door will awaken in full." The rest of the text was stained with blood, illegible even under chemical treatment. Gabriel spent the entire night cross-referencing the diary with his own history books, connecting dates and events. If his calculations were correct, the cycle Valverde spoke of would be completed that very year, 1952, exactly 269 years after the original incident. The number carried significance. 269 years. 77 cycles of 7, according to the numerological beliefs of the time. At dawn, Gabriel frantically called Father Suarez. To his surprise, the priest did not seem shocked by the discovery. "We have been waiting for this, Senor Morales," Suarez replied wearily. "The Brotherhood never truly dissolved. We have kept vigil, counted the years, searched for the signs. And now you have been chosen to continue our work." "What are you talking about?" Gabriel asked, confused. "Look at your right hand," the priest instructed. "On your palm. That mark you always believed to be a birth scar is the sign of the chosen. You are one of the 7, Senor Morales, one of those destined to face what awaits in the crypt." Gabriel looked down at his palm. There, a small spiral-shaped mark, which had always dismissed as an irregularity in his skin, now seemed to pulse with a life of its own in the morning light. "The 7th of July is approaching," Father Suarez continued. "We must find the other 6 before it is too late. The seal is weakening, Senor Morales. The dreams have already begun, have they not?" Gabriel nodded slowly, remembering the nightmares that had plagued him since his arrival in Puebla. Visions of descending into an endless crypt where 7 figures awaited him around a black stone altar, their faces obscured by shifting shadows that defied logic. What Gabriel did not confess to Father Suarez was that, in those dreams, he was not a victim of those entities. He was one of them. The days that followed turned into a frantic search. Gabriel and Father Suarez, assisted by the Brotherhood of the Seal, which now revealed itself as an organization extending across several countries, began tracking down the other 6 marked ones. According to secret records preserved for centuries, each of the 7 bore a spiral-shaped mark on the palm, and all had been born on the same day, July 7th, 1925, exactly 273 years after the original incident. One by one, they were found, Isabel Cortez, an art restorer working at the National Museum. Alejandro and Sebastian Vega, twin astrophysicists researching gravitational anomalies. Carmen Rojas, a medium and parapsychologist. Javier Mendez, a Jesuit priest specializing in apocryphal texts. Only one remained missing. Miguel Ángel Orozco, a writer of occult literature who had mysteriously disappeared 3 weeks earlier. On July 2nd, the group gathered in the sacristy of Santo Domingo. There, Father Suarez finally revealed the plan. The ritual requires that the 7 descendants confront what lies behind the door, he explained. They must use the original artifacts, recite the sealing words, and each offer a drop of blood upon the altar. And if we refuse, Carmen asked, her professional skepticism clashing with the undeniable supernatural events she had already witnessed. Father Suarez unfolded an ancient map of Puebla. Red dots marked scattered locations across the city. These are unexplained deaths that have occurred in cycles of 7 years since 1683. With each cycle, the numbers increase. In the last one, 1945, 49 people died. This year, if the door is not sealed properly, it will be 343. Gabriel studied Father Mendoza's diary, searching for overlooked details. On a nearly illegible page, he found something deeply unsettling. The 7 chosen is not a guardian, but a conduit. Their blood does not seal the door, it opens it. We must identify who it is before it is too late. That night, while Gabriel continued his research, a noise at his apartment window startled him. Approaching, he found a dead raven on the sill, a small paper scroll tied to its leg. The message, written in what appeared to be blood, read, "She is not who she claims to be. Find Valverde's true letter. M.O. Miguel Ángel Orozco was alive, and he was trying to warn him. But who was she? Isabel, the restorer? Carmen, the medium? And what did he mean by the true letter? The answer came unexpectedly the next day. While examining the original altar of the chapel, now stored in the church basement, Gabriel noticed a hidden compartment in its base. Inside was a sealed packet bearing the episcopal emblem, with a note instructing it to be opened only if the 7 marked ones ever gathered again. The packet contained the authentic letter of Father Valverde, very different from the version preserved in the official church archives. It read, "If you are reading this, it means the cycle has completed and the 7 have returned. Do not trust the one who bears the inverted mark. They are not a chosen guardian, but one of them, taking human form to complete what we unknowingly began, a ritual of invocation, not of sealing. What we believed we were containing, we were in fact feeding with every cycle. The true seal requires the voluntary sacrifice of the 6 pure guardians. The 7th, the impostor, must be identified and expelled before the ritual. Seek the mark that changes under the light of the full moon." Gabriel felt the ground shift beneath his feet. According to the calendar, the next full moon would fall precisely on July 7th, the very night of the ritual. That same afternoon, Father Suarez was found dead in his office, his body covered in spiral-shaped burn marks, as if seared by red-hot irons. Beside him lay a note written in his own blood. "I found her. Beware of." The message broke off unfinished. The police cordoned off the area, while the archbishopric discreetly sent a representative to manage the situation. The 6 marked ones were scattered to separate safe houses by members of the Brotherhood, with strict orders to reunite only on the night of the ritual. Gabriel, isolated in a retreat house on Puebla's outskirts, spent hours studying the spiral mark on his palm under different lights, sunlight, lamplight, even candlelight. The mark remained unchanged. There was no way to know if he was the imposter until the night of the full moon. And by then it might be too late. On the night of July 6th, as Gabriel struggled to fall asleep, he heard a faint scratching at his window. When he opened it, he found Miguel Ángel Orozco, gone, sickly, but alive. "I've been waiting for you," Gabriel said, letting him inside. "I've spent weeks tracking the imposter," Miguel explained. "I've watched them all. I know who it is. How can I trust you?" Gabriel demanded. "You vanished just when this all began. Because I discovered the truth before you, Miguel answered, showing his palm. The spiral mark was there, but unlike the others, it looked like an old scar, as if someone had once tried to cut it from his skin. They tried to silence me when I found this. From his coat, he produced a small wooden box. Inside was an ancient silver medallion, engraved with 7 interlocked spirals. This is the Eye of the 7 Guardians. I recovered it from the Archbishop's private collection. Show it under the moonlight, and it will reveal the imposter. How does it work? Gabriel asked, examining the relic. The silver was fused with the remains of the original 7. It reacts to the presence of whatever dwells beyond the door. I've seen it change color before, Carmen. Gabriel's eyes widened. So Carmen is the imposter? I'm not certain, Miguel admitted. The medallion reacted to her, yes, but it also stirred faintly before Isabel. We must test it on all of us, including ourselves. Just then, a noise came from the hallway. The door burst open, revealing Carmen and Isabel, accompanied by 2 Brotherhood members. We came as soon as we got your message, Carmen said, glaring suspiciously at Miguel. I didn't send any message, Gabriel replied tensely. A heavy silence filled the room. Gabriel clenched the medallion in his hand, feeling it grow warm. Outside, the clouds parted, and a nearly full moon cast its silver light through the window. The medallion began to glow with a soft blue radiance. Instinctively, Gabriel raised it toward the moonlight. It vibrated violently, spinning in his palm as if alive. Careful, Miguel shouted, leaping forward. At that instant, Isabel lunged at Gabriel, not to attack but to shove him aside. A Brotherhood member had drawn a ritual knife from his robes and was about to strike. There, it's him, Isabel Craid. He's been following us since we found the diary. The man grinned, but his smile was unnatural, as though his features didn't quite fit his face. His once brown eyes now reflected a sickly yellow light, like a predator's in the dark. 6 cycles, he spoke, his voice echoing unnaturally. 6 times 7 years. This time, the door will open completely. The second Brotherhood member tried to subdue him, but the imposter hurled him across the room with inhuman strength. In Gabriel's hand, the medallion now blazed with an almost blinding light, its glow locked on the intruder. Close the doors. Miguel Craid. He must not escape. But then Gabriel noticed something terrifying. The spiral on his own palm had begun to burn, glowing faintly red in the moonlight. Isabel's and Carmen's marks glowed the same way. The 3 exchanged horrified looks. We're all conduits, Gabriel whispered. The letter was incomplete. It's not just one of us. It's all of us. The imposter let out a guttural laugh as his skin rippled, something moving beneath it. Not all, he corrected. We only need one to complete the circle. And now we have her. Suddenly, the other Brotherhood member staggered to his feet, but his eyes now glowed with the same unnatural light. Without a word, he drew a ceremonial dagger and slashed Carmen's throat. Her blood sprayed across the wall, where ancient symbols ignited, glowing with their own light. The very pattern Valverde had once described in the underground chamber. 7 marked, 7 doors, the imposter chanted, his face twisting grotesquely. 6 to contain, 1 to release. Tonight, the cycle is complete. Miguel Angel hurled himself through the window, shattering the glass and crashing into the garden below. Gabriel seized Isabel by the arm, and together they sprinted down the hallway, pursued by the 2 creatures that no longer resembled men. Their limbs stretched in impossible ways, their faces twisted into smiles too wide to be human. The crypt, Gabriel shouted. We must reach the crypt before they do. Are you insane? Isabel Craid. That's exactly what they want. No, it's what they fear, Gabriel gasped. If Valverde's letter is true, the ritual can be reversed, but only in the place where it all began. As they ran through the dark corridors, Gabriel felt his perception shifting. The walls seemed to breathe. The floors rippled beneath their feet like living flesh. Isabel looked at him with terror. You feel it too, don't you? The barrier between worlds is dissolving. Gabriel nodded. Forcing himself to stay calm, even as the inhuman growls of their pursuers drew closer. Sebastián, Alejandro, Javier y Pantez. Where are they? At the church, Isabel replied. The Brotherhood took them there earlier today to prepare for the ritual. Gabriel's chest tightened. Then they're already with them. Turning a corner, they came face to face with Miguel Angel, blood streaking his face, but his eyes still human. The letter, he gasped. It doesn't tell the whole truth. The Brotherhood has been manipulating us. We are not descendants of the victims. We are descendants of those who opened the door. Our ancestors were not taken against their will. They were transformed. A chill gripped Gabriel's spine as the terrible realization sank in. Then why bring us together if they know we're conduits? Why risk it? Because they need to sacrifice us all in the right place at the right time to complete what began centuries ago, Miguel said. The ritual is not meant to seal the door. It's meant to open it forever. At that moment, the ground trembled violently. Through the windows, they saw Puebla's city lights flicker, then go out, forming, from above, a massive spiral with Santo Domingo at its center. It's already begun, Isabel whispered. If we don't stop them now, it will be too late. The three ran toward the church, fully aware they were rushing straight into a trap. But if there was even the slightest chance to stop what was coming, they had no choice. The plaza before Santo Domingo lay unnaturally still and silent. The street lamps cast shadows that moved independently of the objects that created them. As they approached the main entrance, the massive wooden doors creaked open on their own, inviting them in. Inside, the candles on the high altar burned with steady blue flames that refused to flicker despite the drafts of cold air. Before the altar, kneeling in a perfect semicircle, were Sebastián, Alejandro, and Javier, their eyes vacant, chanting in a language that scraped the ears like nails across iron. And behind the altar, where the tabernacle should have stood, now yawned a passage leading down into the depths, glowing with a sickly green light. The Chapel of Silence has become the gate of the abyss, Miguel murmured. And we are the keys. Gabriel clutched the medallion, which now throbbed with its own heartbeat of light. Then let's change the lock, he said grimly, stepping forward. As Gabriel, Isabel, and Miguel descended the passage behind the altar, the air grew heavier and colder. The stone steps, worn slick from centuries of dampness, spiraled downward, illuminated only by the eerie green glow that seemed to seep from the very walls. The hum in their ears grew louder with each step, morphing into unintelligible whispers, as if hundreds of voices were speaking at once in forgotten tongues. The spiral marks on their palms burned so fiercely that Gabriel could barely endure the pain. We're close, Isabel whispered, her pale face gleaming with cold sweat. I can feel them. They're waiting. At the bottom of the staircase, a short corridor led into the ancient crypt. The entrance, sealed for centuries, now gaped open, perfectly circular, as if the stone and mortar had dissolved from within. Miguel stopped, pulling a small vial of dark red liquid from his pocket. Consecrated blood, he explained, from the relic of St. John the Baptist. It won't stop what's inside, but may buy us time. He drew a line across the floor at the crypt's threshold and muttered a prayer in Latin. The liquid shimmered briefly before being absorbed into the stone. Gabriel tightened his grip on the medallion in one hand and on an old silver crucifix in the other. Ready? He asked, but the question was meaningless. They had long passed the point of no return. Crossing the threshold, the chamber revealed itself, vast and impossible, larger inside than the physical dimensions could allow. The walls were covered in shifting symbols that seemed to rearrange themselves constantly, glowing faintly with a purple light. In the center, upon the black stone altar, floated the iron chest, open, radiating an intense glow. Around it stood Sebastián, Alejandro, and Javier, motionless, their eyes completely white. Beside them loomed two twisted figures, the impostors that had pursued them, now fully transformed. Their elongated bodies were grotesquely stretched, their limbs bent at impossible angles. And standing before the altar with his back to them, was a seventh figure, robed in ancient priestly vestments. "Welcome, brothers and sister," said the figure without turning. The voice was instantly familiar to Gabriel. "Father Suarez," Gabriel gasped. "We thought you were dead." The figure turned slowly, revealing the priest's face, but his smile was impossibly wide, and his eyes were bottomless black voids. "Father Suarez died decades ago," the entity answered. "I have worn his skin ever since, waiting patiently. I am the last of the original 7, the one who remained behind to ensure the door would open when the cycle was complete." Isabel stepped forward, raising a silver cross high. "What do you want from us?" she demanded. The creature laughed, a sound like shattering glass. "We want nothing from you. You're already ours. Blood of our blood, flesh of our flesh." The originals did not vanish, they transformed, and their marked descendants are the final bridge. Gabriel glanced at the 3 entranced men by the altar. "They're dead," he whispered. "Not yet," the creature replied. "Their minds have been opened to the truth their bodies cannot yet contain. Once the ritual is complete, the transformation will be permanent." Miguel raised the medallion before him like a shield. "The ritual will not be completed, not while one of us still resists." The entity's expression twisted into amusement and annoyance. "Ah, the Eye of the Guardians. An interesting relic, but useless now. It was meant to identify us, not to stop us." With a flick of its elongated hand, the air around Miguel solidified, pinning him in place. Another gesture flung Isabel against the wall, where she hung suspended above the ground. Gabriel found himself standing alone before the creature that had worn the guise of Father Suarez for so long. "Valverde knew," Gabriel said, stalling for time as his mind raced. In his letter, he wrote that the ritual could be reversed. The creature's smile faltered for the briefest instant. Valverde was a fool. He glimpsed only fragments of the truth before his mind broke. "Then why didn't you complete the ritual earlier?" Gabriel pressed. "Why wait centuries?" "Because the timing must be precise," the entity hissed. "The stars must align. The cycles must end. 7 generations, each one feeding the door with their devotion and fear." As it spoke, Gabriel noticed something extraordinary. The medallion in his hand wasn't just glowing, it was casting a pattern of light across the chamber floor. The lines aligned perfectly with certain carved symbols in the stone. "It wasn't Valverde who wrote the letter," Gabriel said slowly, maneuvering to spread the medallion's light farther. "It was Maria Itzel, wasn't it? She could see beyond the veil." The creature tensed. "We should have destroyed that woman when we had the chance." She foresaw this. She knew the Brotherhood was infiltrated from the beginning. That's why she hid the true letter and the medallion where only the chosen could find them. By now, Gabriel had positioned himself, so the medallion's light completed a perfect circle around the altar. The floor's symbols blazed to life, forming a radiant barrier. The creature roared, a sound no human throat could produce, and lunged. But as it touched the circle of light, its form warped and fractured like an image in a shattered mirror. "The medallion!" Miguel cried, straining against his invisible bonds. "Put on the altar!" Gabriel understood instinctively. The medallion was no mere detector. It was the key. A key not to open, but to close. He dove past the writhing entity and slammed the medallion onto the altar, directly into the open chest. A shockwave of energy blasted through the chamber, knocking everyone off their feet. Symbols spun wildly on the walls as a howling wind erupted from nowhere, tearing at centuries of dust and stone. The chest clanged shut with a sound like a colossal bell. The creature wearing Suarez's face writhed on the ground, its false skin peeling away to reveal something indescribable. An entity made of impossible geometries and colors that did not belong to this world. "This is not the end," it shrieked, its voice no longer pretending to be human. "The door exists in all places in all times. We will return." The medallion pulsed with heat. Without thinking, Gabriel pressed his marked palm against the searing metal lid. The pain was unbearable, but he did not withdraw. Isabel and Miguel, understanding, placed their palms alongside his. A blinding light erupted from the point of contact, forcing Gabriel to shut his eyes. When he opened them again, Sebastian, Alejandro, and Javier lay unconscious on the ground, freed. The twisted impostors had vanished, leaving behind only the stench of ozone and scorched iron. The chest was sealed, the medallion trapped inside. On Gabriel's, Isabel's, and Miguel's palms, the spirals were gone, replaced by ancient scar-like symbols. "It's over," Isabel whispered. "We did it." Miguel, pale and trembling, shook his head slowly. "No, not over. Only contained." Gabriel looked at the black stone altar. 7 names had appeared, freshly carved into its surface, the names of the original 7. "The Brotherhood was wrong," Gabriel murmured. "We weren't 7 marked to open the door. We were 7 guardians, meant to keep it closed." As he spoke, he felt something shift deep inside him. The connection he had briefly felt with whatever lurked beyond the door still lingered, now only as a distant echo, a memory of something that should never be remembered. "What do we do now?" Isabel asked, her eyes drifting nervously toward the staircase that led back to the world above. Gabriel picked up Father Mendoza's diary, which had fallen in the chaos. "Now we take up the mantle. We become the new guardians. We watch, we wait, and we prepare for when they try again." The 3 exchanged solemn looks, fully aware of the weight of the burden they had just inherited. The truth was too dangerous to share, yet too important to forget. As they climbed the stairs, leaving the sealed chamber behind once more, Gabriel could not help but wonder how long until the door called to them again. And when it did, would they be ready? In the months that followed, Puebla returned to normal, at least on the surface. The Church of Santo Domingo reopened its doors. Tourists once again admired its golden altars, its Baroque chapels, its sacred relics. But beneath the city, in the hidden chamber sealed anew, the black stone altar still pulsed with a faint heat, as though remembering what had transpired. Gabriel, Isabel, and Miguel became the silent keepers of the secret. They met once every month in the Chapel of the Virgin of Silence, reciting the prayers that Maria Itzel had once offered centuries before. By day, they lived ordinary lives. Gabriel continued his archaeological research. Isabel restored colonial paintings. Miguel, ever restless, traveled constantly, searching for signs of other doors across the world. But by night, each of them suffered the same dream. They walked together through an endless desert of black sand, beneath a sky filled with unfamiliar stars. In the distance rose 7 colossal gates, glowing faintly. And beyond them, shadows moved, vast, patient, eternal. One night, Gabriel awoke to find a single phrase written on the fog of his window, though he lived alone. The cycle never ends. Epilogue. Decades later, long after Gabriel Morales passed away, his granddaughter discovered a locked trunk among his belongings. Inside were his notes, Father Mendoza's diary, and a sealed envelope addressed to the next guardian. In trembling handwriting, the message read, "If you're reading this, know that the seal is not eternal. Each cycle weakens it. We delayed them in 1952, but the time will come when the medallion must be found again, and new guardians must take our place. Listen to your dreams. Watch for the mark. And remember, silence is the only shield. Never speak their true names." The envelope contained a single black spiral carved into stone. And so, the legend of the Hidden Crypt of Puebla lived on, not as a tale to frighten children, but as a warning written in blood and silence across the centuries.